Hello and welcome. You're watching TVRI World. In the past few years, many countries all around the world, especially member countries of the United Nations, have been focusing on implementing and realizing the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Now, this year marks a crucial step since the United Nations have just released the latest report on the SDGs. Now, of course, this report will not only be reporting on us about the progress of the SDGs, but also about the challenges that we face in realizing social, economic, and environmental welfare globally. Now we're going to learn about this very crucial issue from our very special guest who will be joining us via Zoom all the way from New York City, US. We'll have Ms. Yong-Yi Min, the Chief of Sustainable Development Goals Monitoring Section of the United Nations. I am Tiska Becker for Special Dialogue on SDGs 2024. Now let me start by welcoming our very special guests who have joined us via Zoom. From New York City, US, we have Ms. Yong-Yi Min, Chief of Sustainable Development Goal Monitoring Section of the United Nations. Hello and welcome to Special Dialogue, Ms. Yong-Yi Min. Thank you so much for joining us. It is early morning here in Jakarta, and as we understand, it's quite late at night there in New York City. So thank you so much for joining us at the end of your day.
Thank you so much for inviting me for this great opportunity.
We are very excited indeed to learn more from you about the latest report from the UN on the progress of the SDGs. But before we talk in details about that report, could you please first indulge us in giving us a brief background of the SDGs?
I'm happy to do so. So the Sustainable Development Goals are a collection of 17 interlinked global goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better and a more sustainable future for all by 2030. So these goals are intended to address a wide range of issues, including poverty eradication, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. It was adopted by all 193 UN member states in July 2015. So the SDG provides the world with a comprehensive framework for addressing the most pressing global challenges. So they're universal, apply to all countries, and regardless of their level of development.
All right, so first introduced in 2015, adopted by 193 countries. And now we're in 2024. So we would love to learn more from you about the progress in achieving Sustainable Development Goals, especially since the last report that was issued in the previous year. Could you give us an update?
Yeah, thank you. So this is our ninth year in the implementation of the SDG report. So with just 6 years remaining, current progress falls far short of what is required to meet the SDGs. So the report revealed that only 17% of SDG targets are currently on track, with nearly half showing minimal or moderate progress, and over 1/3 either stalled or even regressed since the baseline 2015. So the lingered impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the escalating conflicts, geopolitical tensions, and the growing climate chaos have severely hindered the progress. So according to our report, an additional 23 million people lived in extreme poverty, and over 150 million more suffer from hunger in 2023 compared to 2019. And also global health progress slowed, and with a very mixed improvement in different health targets. Education remains gravely threatened as many countries see declines in students' math and reading skills, and 1 in 5 young people are not in employment, education, or training. Also, limited progress in achieving gender parity in public life and managerial roles, with a very high level of violence against women and girls. We have also seen the highest number of refugees and forcibly displaced people ever recorded, a staggering 120 million individuals, compared 80 million just 4 years ago, and almost double the level of 2015. So civilian casualty in armed conflicts rose by 72% between 2022 and 2023, with women and children bearing a disproportionately burden of this violence. Our planet health continued to deteriorate at an alarming rate. 2023 marked the warmest year on record, pushing us very dangerously closely to the 1.5-degree threshold of the Paris Agreement. Greenhouse gas emission reached a new high with no sign of abating. The economic landscape for developing countries is also particularly concerning. For the first time of this century, per capita GDP growth in half the world's most vulnerable country lags behind that of the advanced economies. So this trend threatens to reverse decades of progress towards income equality among nations. As our Secretary General has pointed out, the world is getting a failing grade on the promise of the 2030 agenda.
All right, Ms. Min, thank you for that comprehensive summary of the progress. Now, you mentioned only 17% of the goals have been achieved, so it's quite discouraging to hear that, to be honest. It seems quite dim, so if you don't mind, maybe we can lift up the mood a bit by talking about the achievements that was made in each SDG objective this year. Maybe you can do a bit of a breakdown of each of the goals and tell us the achievements and also the factors that support the achievement.
Yeah, since there are 17 goals, I'm not going to go through one by one, but I will highlight that we do see progress in various SDGs areas and in many of the countries, such as reducing child mortality and reducing HIV infection, improving access to energies. So, for example, in health areas, the child mortality, the under 5 mortality rate reduced by 51% between 2000 and 2023. And 134 countries had already met the reducing child mortality target, and 7 more were on track in achieving these targets. The key factor of this achievement is the following. First is the healthcare improvements. So the increased access to healthcare services, including maternal and child health service, vaccination to children, prenatal care for mothers has significantly reduced child mortality rates. And also the second factor is the nutrition progress. Many countries has enhanced nutrition through programs that provide better access to healthy food for mothers and children. And this also improved overall child health and help reduce the mortality. And another factor is improved sanitation and clean waters. So investments in clean water and sanitation facilities in many countries have decreased the incidence of waterborne disease, which are the major contributors to the child mortality. And last but not least is education. Education for mothers on health practice and child care has improved early childhood health and survival rates. In other areas, for example, for HIV treatment over the past 3 decades, increased access to life-saving HIV treatments has averted almost 21 million AIDS-related deaths. A major supporting factor is the improved healthcare access, global collaboration, and also advancement in the HIV treatment. And also we see very good improvement in girls' education. So girls has achieved a parity and even surpassed boys in completing school at all level in most regions. So major support factors including increased focus on girls' education and also in strong promotion of gender equality and different initiatives. And another example is on Goal 7, improve access to sanitation. So in 2022, the global electricity access already reached 91%. Also, globally, per capita installed capacity for generating electricity using renewable energy nearly doubled from like a 2015 level to 2022 level. There's many supporting factors, such as many countries invest in renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, hydropower, and this increase access to affordable and sustainable energy in many countries and regions. And there's also expansion of energy infrastructure, including like a grid and off-grid solution, and also this has brought electricity to remote and underserved areas. And many governments provide policies and incentives promoting the energy access and also efficiency and renewable energy adoption. And last but not least, the international support. There's a strong financial and technical support. So this is just a few highlight examples. So overall progress in this area is a result of coordinated efforts by governments, international organizations, civil society, the private sector, and they leverage data innovation and also through targeted intervention to address this special challenge. So the acceleration action need to build on this success. I think if we build on this success, we can reverse our failing rate of achieving the SDGs.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Min, for highlighting all the success and achievements in realizing the 17 goals of the SDGs. But I want to follow up on something you mentioned at the beginning of our interview, of our discussion about the multiple global crises that have happened in recent years that have severely hindered the progress of the SDGs realization. And namely, one of the biggest one at the beginning was the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected all of us globally. Now, could you tell us more in detail, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the progress towards the SDGs, especially in terms of poverty eradication and also in health and education sector?
Yeah, the COVID pandemic has a profound impact on the progress towards the SDG. It stalled or even reversed the progress in many areas. For example, in terms of poverty eradication, SDG 1, and the pandemic reversed progress. The economic disruption caused by the pandemic, including the job losses, reduced income, and economic contraction, has pushed millions of people back into poverty. So the COVID pandemic caused extreme poverty to increase in 2020 for the first time in decades, reversing the global progress by 3 years. So the share of the world's population living in extreme poverty rose from 8.9% in 2019 to 9.7% in 2020, driven mainly by the increase in low and lower middle income countries. However, just want to point in contrast, extreme poverty continued to decline in upper middle and high income countries, mainly attributed to their swift fiscal support for the vulnerable population groups. So by 2022, the extreme poverty rate had returned to pre-pandemic level in most countries, except in low-income countries. So there were, I think I mentioned before, there were 23 million more people living in extreme poverty in 2022 than in 2019. In the 75 most vulnerable countries, 1 in 3 of this country is now poorer on average than before the pandemic. In terms of health, basically the COVID pandemic has significantly affected global health. So most significant impact is the reverse steady progress in life expectancy over the past 2 decades. So before the pandemic, global life expectancy rose consistently from 66.8 years in 2000 to 73.1 years in 2019. So this is reflecting years of improvements in health and related area. So COVID-19 swiftly reversed this positive trend with global life expectancy plumped to 71.4 years by 2021. This is back to the level of 2012. This is basically 10 years of progress has been wiped out by the COVID pandemic. So COVID-19 ranked among the top 3 leading cause of death globally in 2020 and also 2021. And so the pandemic put immense pressure on the health system worldwide, diverting resources and attention away from other critical health services, such as routine health service, including vaccination, maternal health care, and treatment for chronic diseases were disrupted. So childhood vaccination has experienced the largest decline in 3 decades, and tuberculosis and malaria deaths have increased compared with the pre-pandemic level. Another issue we want to mention is the mental health crisis. So the pandemic also triggered a global mental health crisis with rising level of anxiety, depression, and other mental health conditions. Also, it has a detrimental impact on education, the SDG 4, with severe disruption in education system worldwide. So we know that at the beginning of the pandemic, there's a school at the height of the pandemic, school in more than 190 countries were closed, affecting over 1.6 billion learners globally. So this school closure had a worrisome consequence for children's learning and well-being, particularly for the most vulnerable children, girls, and whose disadvantage include children in low-income countries and also those without access to remote learning technology. So estimated 147 million children missed more than half of their in-person instruction over the past, in the first 2 years of the pandemic. So as a result, this generation of children could lose a combined total of 17 trillion in lifetime earnings. And also the digital divide, the shift of online learning exposed and deepened the digital divide, with many students lacking access to the internet, devices, or conduct learning environments. This has widened the education inequalities, particularly for the marginalized population groups, and also children with a disability and those in remote areas. And it's also increased dropout rate. So we know the longer children are out of school, the less likely they're to return. So according to a 2020 report of UNESCO, 24 million of learning from the pre-primary level to the university level are at risk of not returning to school. And also impact on nutrition. The school closure also disrupted the school feeding program, which are a very crucial source of nutrition for many children, particularly in low-income countries. A recent study from this report, we showed that a study done by OECD on 81 country and showing that from 2018 to 2022, the mean performance in mathematics plumped by a record of 15 points, and the reading score declined by 10 points. This is twice the previous record. So this is an unprecedented drop, highlighted the profound impact of COVID pandemic on global education. So overall, the pandemic has significantly slowed down or even reversed progress on many of the SDGs.
All right, thank you, Ms. Min, for thoroughly explaining it to us. And though we are now entering, of course, the post-pandemic era, we are still living the consequences of those disastrous years for sure. But we are learning a lot from it as well. But right now, as we speak, there's also a number of world crises happening, and like the climate change effects, which are affecting the whole world. We have a water crisis happening in different parts of the world as well. You mentioned about the unprecedented refugee crisis, consequences of different wars. Now, I'm sure this must put massive strain on the realization of the SDGs. Now, what I would like to know, how does the UN address these issues? Is there like a priority list of all these dire problems, or is it done simultaneously at the same time? Because I can only imagine what sort of mechanism is being put forward to make sure that all these crises doesn't hamper too much the effort to realize the SDGs.
Yeah, I think our Secretary General mentioned that there's three priorities that we highlight in the report. The first is peace and security. I think that the development cannot be achieved without a peace. And as we heard that the world is facing the escalating conflicts, including the war in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Sudan, and which causes the unprecedented 120 million forcibly displaced people. So we have to resolve this through the ongoing conflict, through dialogues and diplomacy. So this is very critical. The second priority that is emphasized by our Secretary General is the financial support to developing countries. So the SDG investment gaps in developing countries now stand at 4 trillion per year. So developing countries really require more financial resources on fiscal space. So reforming the global financial architecture is critical to unlocking this volume of financing required to support the sustainable development. The third priority we emphasize is the implementation surge. So massive investment and effective partnerships are needed to drive these critical transitions in food, energy, social protection, digital connectivity, climate action, and more. So this a key transition action can have a multiplier effect on many of the SDGs. And in addition, we have to strengthen this global corporations, and international cooperation is critical for all these implementations.
All right, Ms. Min, we're going to take a short break, but when we get back, I'd love to talk more about the challenges that we face in realizing the SDGs, and more importantly, about the international contribution in how to achieve the SDGs. So we'll be right back. Stay right here on Special Dialogue on TVRI World. Welcome back to Special Dialogue on TVRI World. We are still conversing with our very special guest who's joining us via Zoom from New York City, U.S., Ms. Young-Yi Min, Chief of Sustainable Development Goals, Monitoring Section of the United Nations. Let's continue our conversation. Ms. Min, I want to pick up where we left off when we discussed about the many challenges, the many crises happening around the world. Maybe you can pinpoint, if I have to ask you and you have to give us a direct answer, what is actually the biggest challenge right now in achieving the goals this year, in this point in 2024? And are there any steps taken right now to address those challenges?
Yeah, as I mentioned, there's in addition to the COVID pandemic lingering effect, and we are facing, as you mentioned, the climate change and environmental degradation is one of the biggest factors. I think climate change continue to be a pressing challenge We all experience increasingly severe weather events, heat wave, rising sea levels, and biodiversity loss threaten the livelihood. It also threatens our food security infrastructures. And so this is definitely one of the biggest challenging. And unfortunately, we do not have a sufficient climate actions. So despite the global agreement, like the Paris Agreement, so many countries are still not on track to meet their climate targets, which is very essential to achieve the multiple SDGs. And currently, we also witness this very high fossil fuel subsidies. So, in 2022, the fossil fuel subsidy reached like a $1.53 trillion, which is a historical high. And we see also increasing global greenhouse gas emission, and it's supposed to decrease from now to 2030 by 2%, and then drop to net zero by 2050. But however, we witness more increase in greenhouse gas emission reach a new record every year. And then we see the record-breaking temperatures put us very close to the dangerous 1.5 degrees threshold. And the second one I think I already mentioned is escalating conflict. So this war has diverse a lot of resources, attention from the developer efforts. Not only that, it disrupted the global food and energy supplies. That's probably one of the reasons that the global fossil fuel subsidy reached a record. And we also noticed that like a food instability index increased in many of the countries, and also created like a new humanitarian crisis in many of the part of the world. So also the geopolitical tension, the political instability in various regions has hindered the implementation of the SDG program and weakened the government structure necessary for sustainable development. And we also see the economic disruption and also increased inequality in many countries. I think many, particularly low-income countries currently face very high debt levels and also declined in foreign direct investment to these countries. As I previously mentioned, that there's a 4 trillion annual SDG investment gap for these developing countries. So basically, this constrained the government's ability to fund and implement the SDG-related initiatives.
All right, Ms. Min, you mentioned about, excuse me, the importance of international cooperation and multilateral partnership in realizing the SDGs. Now, could you tell us what are the most encouraging aspects when it comes to international cooperation, and which aspect do you think would need much improvement to make sure that the progress towards the realization of the SDGs can be done by 2030?
Yeah. So the international cooperation and multilateral partnership are very critical to achieving the SDGs. So this effort need to bring together the diverse stakeholders and resources and also expertise to address this very complex global challenge that no single countries can tackle alone. There's a few areas that the global community can work together. First, as I mentioned, resource mobilization and also financial support. So we need to bring this funding and the support needed for developing countries and put them together and to address the development challenges. I think the positive, encouraging signal is at the SDG summit in September 2023, the member states commit $500 million of SDG stimulus. So we will encourage all the countries to advancing their commitment of this $500 million SDG stimulus. We also need to encourage the international cooperation lead to the development of innovative financing mechanism, such as the different green bonds, blended finance, the SDG impact funds. These two can help attract also private sector investment for sustainable development projects. Particularly in the areas, as I mentioned, the transition area, like clean energy infrastructure and also social service. And international cooperation also like a critical in terms of technology transfers and capacity buildings. This enabled the country to share best practice and technology expertise between countries. And this is particularly important for developing countries that they may lack the capacity to implement the certain SDG related independently. And this international cooperation can offer a capacity building program aimed at strengthening this different countries' institution, improve the governments and this technology to help them. I think there's other international cooperation very urgently needed in this global challenges. As we mentioned, the climate change. The nature of the climate change requires this global coordinated action. And so international agreements like the Paris Agreement are the result of this multilateral cooperations. They set the global target and mobilize the resources to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So collective effort also made to support this country in implementing their nationally determined contribution to reduce greenhouse gas emission. I think the COVID pandemic also underscores the importance of international cooperation in addressing these global health challenges. So different initiative like the vaccine initiative, which aim to ensure the equitable access to the COVID-19 vaccination, also demonstrate how multilateral partnership can help address the global health crisis. And I think we mentioned peace and security is one of the biggest challenges. So conflict resolution and peace building require international organizations such as UN play a critical role in conflict resolution, peacekeeping, and peace building. So this effort are also very essential for creating the stable environment needed to achieve the SDG, particularly in these conflict-affected regions. And we also need a global collaboration for humanitarian assistance. So in times of crisis, international cooperation ensure that humanitarian assistance is delivered where it's needed, and also multilateral partnerships enable a coordinated response to disasters, ensure the resources are allocated efficiently, and the most vulnerable population will receive this support. So this is just a few areas that we really requires effective global coordination.
All right, Ms. Min, I think it's very crucial to understand that the stakeholders in realizing the SDGs, they're not just governments, but as you mentioned, the private sector and even the civil society have also do their parts in achieving the 17 goals. Now, how would you suggest we can strengthen the coordination between the government and the private sector and the civil society so we all can move in line in synergy in achieving the goals?
So to achieve the SDG, we need to take a whole of a society approach. So therefore, the private sector and the civil society play crucial roles in supporting the implementation of the SDGs. And for private sector contribution, there's many things they can do. For example, they can have a sustainable business practice, so align the corporate strategy with SDG targets. They implement a responsible, sustainable supply chain management and also reduce the environmental footprint of operations. So many of the business have a sustainable reporting, and so we see the increasing of a company, particularly the big company, in reporting their sustainable like way of doing business. and also through innovations. So they can, through innovations and technology, we know that the private company have the most advanced like technologies and innovation. So they can develop products and services that can address some of the urgent SDG challenges, such as climate change and renewable energies. And they can investment in research and development for the different sustainable solutions. We also encourage that they provide financing to support the SDG implementation, so increasing impact investment, and also focus on environment, social, and governance focused investment, and also provide funding for sustainable development projects. It's really critical. For the civil society organization, there's a lot of grassroots implementation, and they can an executive local project align with the SDG target. They can mobilize community participation. And the one area is particular for relative to my work is through data monitor and accountability. So through citizen data or citizen generated data, they can provide complementary data to help to monitor SDGs and provide particular for information on the most vulnerable population group to drive a policy implementation and target policy implementation for this the people who are left behind. They can also help to raise public awareness about SDGs and advocate for policies supporting SDG implement. So we call for like a multi-stakeholder cooperation to foster this regular dialogue between the government, the private sector, and the civil society, and create sector-specific groups on different SDG implementation. And among this group, multi-stakeholder group, to provide them opportunity involve the private sector and the civil society in policy development process, and also consult them throughout the SDG implementation and also as national SDG strategies. As I also mentioned, data sharing and data is a very critical, important for SDG implementation. So we 85% of the data currently holding in private sector, and the civil society data also can complement the data. So we encourage that they work together to develop the shared data platform of SDG monitoring, and also encourage open data initiative. And also, I guess, in addition, and we will encourage to do capacity building program. Government can lead the training for business on SDG integration, and can support for civil society organizing to enhance the SDG related capabilities. Through also local implementation partnership. So there's many ways that we can foster these collaborations through these multi-partners platforms.
All right, Ms. Min, we've learned so much from you, from your valuable insights. So we're going to give our viewers a bit of a break so they can digest all these valuable insights. But we'll be back for sure for the last part of Special Dialogue to talk more about the importance of data in implementing the SDGs. We'll be right back. Stay close. Thank you for staying with us on Special Dialogue on TVRI World. We are still conversing with our very special guest, Ms. Yong Min, the Chief of Sustainable Development Goals Monitoring Section of the United Nations, where she tells us about the progress and challenges facing us in realizing the goals. Let's continue conversation and let's learn more. Ms. Min, like we said before, and I'm actually picking up on a few of the statements and points you've made in our conversation earlier about the importance of data in implementing the SDGs. Now, before we proceed, maybe you can tell us a little bit more of the mechanism of collecting the data. Everybody who are a bit of familiar with statistics know how complex it can be, and ensuring that the data and measurements that we need to address an issue are timely and reliable. Can you please tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the global SDG monitoring is based on a set of 231 unique indicators that are agreed by this interagency and expert group on SDG indicators. So this group is composed of 28 member states that represent all the regions. Through many years of work, so we agreed this set of indicators. So for the global monitoring, the data original from the country. So country collects the data and they provide the data to the international agency we call custody agency. The international agency will check the consistent quantity of the data to ensure they're comparable, because for the global monitor, we need a comparable data to be able to aggregate them together to form the global figures. And so after we work together with, I think, over 50 international, regional organizations, and also additional partners in this global data collection. So after the custody agency collected, cleaned, ensure the quality of the data, and they send this data and metadata to the UN Statistical Division. So we hosted this global SDG database, which currently have, I think, 2.9 million data points, including country-level data across all the SDG indicators, measure the 169 targets, and also have a regional aggregate data and also global aggregated data for the SDG monitor. As you mentioned, like beta, basically data is in my blood, so data is very vital for implementing the SDGs due to its role in measuring progress, informing decision making, and effective resource allocation, ensuring accountability, and also identifying gaps. So it establishes the baselines and measure targets, allow for the tracking for each goal through the specific indicators. And so accurate data help the policymaker in developing effective strategy and allocate resource very efficiently, ensure the intervention addresses the most critical area. And so it's also help implement the policies that are most likely to have a positive impact. Monitoring and data can ensure transparency and accountability by making information available to the public and allowing stakeholders to hold the governments and other very important actors accountable for their commitment and actions. I think the data also can help bring awareness and foster collaboration. And through this monitoring, we can encourage collaboration and knowledge sharing among countries, organizations, and communities. So this it's very important to also promote the SDGs.
Now, Ms. Min, have some of the crises that we mentioned before, especially the wars, the multi-wars that is happening in different parts of the world, have they affected the data monitoring and data collecting?
I think the most impact is the COVID pandemic. During that time, because a lot of the data collection need a face-to-face interaction, like a census, house survey, has to be postponed. Although there's a lot of new approach has been taken through, for example, internet interview or phone interview, but it has the biggest impact on data collection. Also because resource allocation, a lot of government redirected their fund to more urgent needs such as health, social protection. And so the funding to data actually was reduced during the pandemic. So we see some significant impact on data collection during the pandemic.
All right, Ms. Min, one final question to conclude our conversation. What would the United Nations expect from the global commitment and support to the SDGs in the coming years, starting now as we are in the mid of 2024?
Yeah, I know that, as we mentioned earlier, the effective global cooperation is very critical for our survival. But it's very challenging to achieve among all this distrust and outdated structure that no longer reflect the current political and economic realities. So the UN will organize the Summit of the Future and in September. I think it's the 22nd to 23rd of September this year. The Summit of Future is a very high-level event that gathers the world leader to establish a new international consensus on creating a better present and safeguard the future. And so through the summit, we want to bring together the UN member states, the UN agency, NGOs, CSOs, academia, institution, private sector, and particular youth to expect it to adopt a pact for the future, including a global digital compact and a declaration on future generation. So this unique opportunity aims to restore the global trust and prove that international collaboration can successfully achieve shared goals and addressing these emerging threats and opportunities. So in addition, and I think we have a couple more opportunity that to step up our effort in implementing as SDGs through the global collaboration. And there's a Finance for Development conference in 2025, and there's also the World Social Summit planned for 2025. Through this different initiative meetings, high-level summit, we would like to have this increased political will. So the UN expected that the government will demonstrate a stronger political commitment by integrating their SDG international policy plans and budget and align the national development strategy with more closely to 2030 agenda and to ensure the progress of the SDGs priorities. And through this also enhance the financial resources. As I mentioned, the world leader committed this 500 million SDG stimulus. So the UN anticipated the greater mobilization of financial resources, including public, private, and also additional funding to support the SDG implementation. So additionally, we hope to expect to enhance collaboration among this government, the private sector, the civil society organization, and the international agency. This partnership are very critical for leveraging the expertise, resources, technology to address this very complex and interlinked global challenge. I think through this different meetings, the UN also urge our stakeholders to scale up their effort, particularly in areas where progress has been slow or uneven. This including address the needs of most vulnerable population, tackling climate change, reducing inequality, and ensure access to essential services like education and health cares. And I think we also need a great global solidarity. The UN expect a strong sense of global solidarity and collective responsibility. So as I mentioned earlier, the SDGs are a universal agenda, and their success depends on coordinated efforts across all countries, sector, and the community. And so this expectation reflect the UN's vision for a more sustainable, equitable, and resilient world.
Ms. Young-Ye Min, it's been such a privilege for us to have the Chief of Sustainable Development Goal Monitoring Section of United Nations to join us and to give us such valuable insights. Thank you so much once again for your valuable time, and we wish you all the best, and please have a good rest. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Now that's the end of our very special program, the special dialogue on SDGs 2024. We hope that our conversation have given you much needed insights and backgrounds on the progress and challenges that we face in whole countries in the world in improving social, economic, and also environmental welfare. And of course, we also wish that hopefully we all can get the motivation and inspiration, because as it is said by Ms. Yong Min earlier, it is a critical moment of choice and consequences. So let's all be part of the solution of the global movement to realize the SDGs by 2030. I'm Siska Becker for Special Dialogue. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.